Welcome, friends. I'm so glad to have you here tonight with me. This past week has been really busy for me because I have been running around like a crazy person getting my medical clinic all decorated for Halloween for the kids to come through and go trick-or-treating at the place where I'm working. I was so super excited. Our theme was Mario Brothers. You can't get a lot of Halloween decorations in most of the international locations I've lived at over the past 6 years. So I have to rely on like what I have from before when I lived in the US, but then also I have to make the rest of the decorations to fit our theme. And even like just getting, I don't know, like big sheets of paper or poster board, that's not really available here. So you have to work with what you have. For example, we made Bowser's Castle out of a bunch of trash bags. But, you know, I mean, it still looks cute. The kids get the theme and the parents get the theme. I found that a lot of the parents love Mario more than their kids do. But my son absolutely loves Mario, and he dressed up as Mario for trick-or-treating, and my daughter dressed up as Jack Skellington from Nightmare Before Christmas, which is like the dream of my life, that my kids would come to love the movie Nightmare Before Christmas as much as I do. So I'm living the dream, guys. And I got all these great costumes for all of my coworkers. Many of them haven't really ever celebrated Halloween before. They're Malaysian. Or if they've celebrated, they haven't really like dressed up and had their own like theme for the health unit. So this has been it was really exciting for all of us. We even made up a little dance that we did to the Mario theme song, which was fun. And I was just really excited, happy, and proud of everything we accomplished and how happy the kids were. Oh my gosh, we even did like a little activity where the kids had to ride these scooters up and down a hallway, kind of like Mario Kart style, in order to earn the Halloween candy as the prize. So that was really cute. And I did these like really extreme crazy Halloween nails for myself, guys. I don't have access to getting like my nails done here via like acrylic or gel nails. They do have like basic manicure services, which are nice. One of my favorite things, everybody like kind of has a thing that they like to do, and one of my favorite things is getting my nails done. That's like a good activity I can do that really makes me feel like I've taken care of myself. So sometimes I feel sad that I don't have access to getting my nails done like I used to do in the United States, and I've been learning to do them myself and adding in some like really weird touches. And these are my crazy extreme Halloween nails. I had so much fun doing it, and I had a great time celebrating Halloween early and doing trick-or-treating with all of the staff at the place that I work at. So it was really fun, and I wanted to share that with you guys. Okay, moving on. I'm here to talk about Jinger Duggar. So, as most of you are probably aware, Jinger Volo posted a teaser on her social media about releasing a book soon. The book is called Becoming Free Indeed, and so many media outlets are freaking out about it. Basically, reports from places like Without a Crystal Ball and The Sun are questioning if this book will be Ginger's way of breaking up with her fundamentalist family and denouncing the way she was raised. In all honesty, we have no ability to know what the book is actually going to say yet, but I'm here to argue it's not going to be the shocker we are all hoping for. Because if you're a longtime subscriber and listener to my videos, you probably know that I have a personal opinion that Jinger Duggar left behind one high-demand religion for another, and one Jim Bob Duggar for a similar replacement in Jeremy Volo. Jeremy Volo and his brother-in-law, Ben Seawald, differ from their father-in-law, Jim Bob Duggar, in that they practice Calvinism and consider themselves Southern Baptist Calvinists. One of the main differences this theory of religion has between what the Duggars practiced on the show is the idea of predestination. So yes, you heard me right, folks. It sounds like something we learned about in middle school social studies class when we talked about the British invading parts of Africa, right? A notion I thought was dead and gone so long ago exists in the heart and mind of Jeremy Volo. The idea that each of us is predestined for the life we have here on earth. We are predestined to be saved or not. It's not about all of our choices, but about the fact that God chose us before we were ever born to be good enough to join him in heaven someday. Jeremy and Ben have spoken out about this belief on the show and in their sermons. And honestly, it seems like the perfect belief system for someone like Jeremy, who wants to go live in a multi-million-dollar home in LA and still call himself a Christian pastor. Like, now he can justify all this money, opulence, and the countless purchases of expensive sneakers and t-shirts. Here's what Celebrity has to say about the release of Ginger's new book. Jinger Duggar Volo reveals earth-shaking realization in explosive new book, Becoming Free Indeed, where she discusses harmful ideology of her youth. Jinger Duggar Volo is releasing an explosive new book, Becoming Free Indeed, My Story of Dismantling Faith from Fear, in 2023. The former Counting On star will reportedly discuss the harmful ideology of her youth and the reasons she no longer prescribes to the religious beliefs of the Duggar family, including her parents Jim Bob and Michelle Duggar. I want to break in here and say, I really have reason to believe that that's not what is going to be discussed in the book. I think that Jinger is going to say that she's made a lot of changes after she met Jeremy, and they were changes for the better, that she still believes wholeheartedly in Christian fundamentalist religion, but she's just tweaked it a little bit in her relationship with Jeremy. I think the book is going to be about how she used to have a lot more anxiety and fears about being herself, and we know because she's written about that in prior books, her issues with anxiety, depression, and eating disorders. And I think this new book is going to say, like, hey, Jeremy saved me by bringing me into this new religion where things are just slightly different, and I can feel okay about wanting money and wanting to get ahead in life. And overall, I just think this is a better way to be a Christian. But I don't think it's going to be earth-shattering, and I don't think it's going to reveal a lot about what happened to Jinger growing up and her actual feelings about that. Okay, Celebrity goes on to say, Jinger has published 3 books thus far. Her first was titled Growing Up Duggar, which she wrote with her sisters. And in this book, the 4 eldest Duggar daughters discuss their faith, dreams for the future, and what it's like growing up in an ultra-religious, supersized family. Following that, Jinger penned a book with her husband, Jeremy Volo. In 2021, they published The Hope We Hold, Finding Peace in the Promises of God. The book featured behind-the-scenes details of the couple's love story. Jinger and Jeremy discussed first-time parenthood and holding on to the hope there will be better days ahead when life becomes difficult. I really dislike this book. I've talked about it before. Normally, I wouldn't even read a book like this, but because of my interest in the Duggars, I went ahead and purchased the book to kind of find myself leafing through it, but not being able to read the whole thing. And essentially, the way that the book is assembled from my point of view is like one chapter is Jeremy talking about his life growing up, then the next chapter is Jinger kind of mirroring what Jeremy's talking about in her own life. So it goes like Jeremy, Ginger. And one thing I found really annoying about what was written in this book is I felt it's a lot of Jinger basically being like, I had a really like loving upbringing, but I was so sheltered and just kind of like waiting for someone to come along and save me. And then here came this guy, this wonderful, power, magnificent man in Jeremy Volo, who I knew I could never deserve or live up to. I knew he was too good for me. And yet God pushed us together. Jeremy came and he got me. He saved me. He saved me from this life of living in Northwest Arkansas. And even though I still love my parents and believe it was a wonderful upbringing and a great place to live, I'm so grateful for the way that Jeremy swooped in and saved this poor, impoverished girl who knew so little about life and took her away, even though I wasn't pretty enough and I wasn't good enough and I didn't go to college, which she talks about repeatedly in the book. Like, the whole book is really about Jinger kind of like putting herself down talking about like having anxiety, being like I wasn't good enough for this guy, Jeremy, who eventually came into my life, and then kind of being like, he saved me and now we're together and I started working out and things have gotten so much better for me. And Jeremy's part of the book is just like, hey, I grew up playing soccer and I loved it and I love tennis shoes and I love my family and God. The end. That's essentially what the book is. So it wasn't that interesting to me, but it also kind of exposed this narrative that Jinger has written about herself in her own mind, that Jeremy is kind of like a white knight who came in and saved her. It's just not something I can really get into. That book did extremely well though, and they made a lot of money off of it. Celebrity goes on to say the couple's second book and Ginger's third published work was a children's book titled You Can Shine So Bright in 2022. In August of this year, Jinger took to Instagram to announce the book was available for purchase. However, controversy followed the title because people thought it was allegedly racist and ableist. And I know that the children's book didn't do as well as the first book they wrote. A press release from HarperCollins Christian Publishing revealed the details of Duggar's book. A summary explains that the former reality star will disclose how she began questioning her youth's harmful ideology and learned to embrace true freedom via different religious beliefs. When Jinger Duggar Vola was growing up, she was convinced that obeying the rules was the key to success and God's favor. She zealously promoted the basic life principles of Bill Gothard in the IbLP, the release began. These include fastidiously obeying the modesty guidelines, no shorts or jeans, only dresses, eagerly submitting to the umbrella of authority. Any disobedience of her parents would place her outside God's protection, promoting the relationship standard of courtship, and avoiding any music with a worldly beat, among others, the press release promoted. Jinger, along with 3 of her sisters, wrote a New York Times bestseller about their religious convictions. She believed this level of commitment would guarantee God's blessings, even though in private she felt constant fear that she didn't measure up to the high standards demanded of her, it continued. She credits her brother-in-law, Ben Seawald, and husband, Jeremy Volo, for opening her eyes to a different belief system. So essentially, now she can wear shorts. She can listen to like Christian pop music. So I think that that's really what this book is going to be about. And I'm a little bit bothered that people have been so quick to be like, wow, Ginger's coming out and speaking out against the IbLP and everything that happened in her family. I don't think that's what's going on at all. But I will tell you a little bit about what I do think is going on with Jinger. Okay, so recently we found out that Jinger Duggar and Jeremy have bought an $830,000 California mansion. How can they afford this? Well, I'm going to let you know how. Of course, they're raking in the money from the books that Jinger and Jeremy have published, but the real story is on Ginger's Instagram and on their new YouTube channel. But especially Ginger's Instagram. You can go and check it out. Almost every post Jinger makes is promoting some kind of a product that she's clearly getting paid to advertise on her channel. Jeremy is no fool, and I absolutely believe that once he realized he was going to be able to marry a Duggar girl, it didn't necessarily matter what girl it was. He just knew that he wanted to be able to use her fame to build himself a fortune and make sure that he would always be taken care of, along with his family. I do believe that he cares about Jinger and his daughters. Don't mistake me on that. I'm sure he does care about them. But I think he realizes that the draw to any kind of brand for their family has to do solely with Jinger. When we go to Ginger's Instagram, we also see that she is heavily devoted to kicking off this Ginger's Kitchen video series on her YouTube page. And this is where I think Jeremy kind of saw what was happening with Christine Brown from the Sister Wives and was like, hey, we need to hop on this cooking show train and try to beat Christine Brown to the station. I think he would really like TLC to notice what's going on with Jinger and start some kind of a cooking show with her. He knows that he doesn't really want to start a reality show in which he has to feature his own children because he's spoken out against that so much. So it would look very hypocritical if he turned around and did a whole Duggar-esque reality show at this point in time. But I do think he would love to get himself and his wife on TV so that they could have a steady stream of income rolling in outside of Ginger's social media revenue. Because let's be honest, we all know that Jeremy isn't making very much money. If anything, he's kind of acting as a manager for Ginger's career. Okay, so it all leaves me feeling kind of sad, but not really, because at least Jinger escaped Northwest Arkansas. She has freedom out from underneath the beliefs of her dad and everything that happened with Josh Duggar. She's gotten away from a lot of that, and she has made decisions which seem to put her more in a mainstream type of environment. She hangs around with people who clearly could influence her to be even more liberal than where she is at this point. And she has, some level of freedom. So I think that that's good. But I will argue that she's left one high demand religion for another. For those of you who aren't aware, Jeremy studies under a pastor called John MacArthur, and I made a video about him a few months ago. I'll link it down below for you to take a look. But John MacArthur is caught up in all kinds of scandals, my friends. I will be posting additional videos about what's going on with him. If you want to know more about John MacArthur and Jeremy's church, you should check out julieroys.com that has done some intensive investigative journalism regarding the scandals of John MacArthur. Beyond all that, I wanted to share with you guys this podcast I got super into listening to after I saw someone posting on Reddit about it. Okay, so the Reddit user found this podcast called Dinner Party with Jeremy Fall. Okay, so Jeremy Fall is some kind of chef, like some kind of celebrity chef out in LA, I believe. And I had no idea, but he's linked to all of these different famous people like Jay-Z and Tia Mowry. But he also apparently is linked to Jinger Duggar, and he had her appear on his podcast. The interview ended up not having anything to do with Gothard or the IbLP. Actually, it seems like the host barely seems to know anything about that kind of stuff, beyond noting that he realizes Jinger grew up in a religious family. Instead, it's all about the forced fame Jinger endured from a young age and how it kind of traumatized her and prevented her from making deeper or more real connections with people around her. She stayed very insulated among her family. A few points that I found kind of interesting that Jinger brings up are that she admits her parents warned the kids not to talk or brag about filming and trips while they were on the show. So she really had to keep part of her life secret, and she felt that it damaged her relationships with people around her. She often felt she couldn't share who she truly was. She talks about how on one of the episodes of 19 Kids and Counting, she said that she would like to move to the city, and she felt that really got glamorized and blown up, and it horrified her that people thought she was dying to get away from her family. She feels very overwhelmed by the fact that anything she says or does in the public can be taken the wrong way. And then lastly, something I thought was kind of interesting but also weird is that she talks about how Jeremy kind of constantly reminds her that she has arrested development in terms of her social and emotional growth. And she kind of talks about, once again, how it's because she, quote unquote, didn't move out of the house for college. And she emphasizes that again, she didn't go to college like Jeremy. And Jeremy often takes the time to explain to her that a lot of people go to college to, quote unquote, find themselves from 18 to 22 years old, but she didn't really have that experience. So she's going through some of that later in life and in a different environment than other people. She states that she finds LA much less stressful of a place to live in because she's not the only one with a media career. And she also talks about she's had to really learn how to form female friendships outside of her sisters and mom. When she's with people, she often wonders, who does this person want me to be? It's very interesting, and we've talked about that before in some of my videos, that Jinger really comes across as someone who usurps the person's personality who she's spending time with. On the podcast, they talk a little bit about mental health. Interviewer talks about anxiety, depression, and even says that he's on medication. Jinger admits to having some of the same feelings, and she says that she enjoys the friendship with the host. Even though they might have different beliefs, they're still good friends. There's no discussion about Josh or anything like that, but she does talk about how the show kind of like influenced her life. I found it interesting, and I'm going to play some parts of the interview for you here now, and you can always go and check out the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. It's called Dinner Party with Jeremy Fall, and it's episode, I think, 3.
Very strong faith in our family. And so they were like, yeah, we just want to honor God with what we do, and people are following our lives. And so they want to see what we do on a daily basis. We'll show them. And so I think people would take when they'd watch the show. I remember one time I had said, I made like an offhanded comment about the city and how I really loved the city. And, you know, I'd love to live in the city one day. But people took that in a wrong sense. And they said that Ginger's the rebel. She wants to run away from her family's home, and just twisted everything. And anytime I do, like, you know, I'd like roll my eyes, and I was trying to be funny. Like as a kid, you know, I'm like, I'd say something funny and then I roll my eyes, and they took those things and were like, okay, she hates her family. She wants to leave. And those things were skewed through the years. People look at, anything I do, a funny facial expression, and read into it. And I think at that point I was frustrated, because I thought, how could people say that when I was totally not implying? I was talking about something lighthearted, and they would piece together, you know, clips from things and make up a story. And that was definitely difficult for me. Just thinking, okay, I just from like, I can't remember the exact time, 4 to 6 months or something. They would come in, pop in here and there and film little clips and put it all together. And so that was my first experience with watching a documentary that was filmed like that, or a reality show. Once it turned into that was a couple years later, it turned into the reality show. And watching that was strange because they sent us the videos. We didn't even have TV to watch ourselves. And so they sent us these videos, and we started watching it, and it was like, oh, huh, that's very unique. Like, people actually want to see us do laundry or whatever it was. Grocery shopping was a huge thing. They were all like so intrigued by. So our lives were opened up at that point to the public, and it was an exciting journey. But of course, there are challenges as well that you face when you are in the public eye.
And the public eye, especially, I feel like in a smaller town is like multiplied as a fishbowl, right? It's like a magnifying glass because there's not many of you out there. Like if you'd grown up in LA like I did, it probably would have been a bit of a different experience, right? So I feel like it's amplified.
Yeah, I think so, for sure. Because a lot of people that I knew, I mean, there were not a ton of, you'd say, celebrities in Arkansas around us. And so growing up, I think that also created somewhat of a challenge, I think, because a lot of people had never traveled out of the state, or they hadn't done a lot. And so it was a very unique place to be on TV. Like you said, in LA, it's so common. So many people are on TV, so many kids are on TV, and it's just a different life in that sense. But in Arkansas, a lot of people were people that my mom went to school with, or my dad went to school with, because they've lived there all their lives in Northwest Arkansas. And so you'd see a lot of those people, and they talk about the show. And I mean, I remember being stopped like multiple times, like everywhere we go. If we went to the grocery store with my mom, we did not like that growing up, because she would get stopped every time she'd go out. People recognizing her and talking to her. And I think I found even that being different than here in LA, because people kind of, in a sense, you know, they kind of leave you alone, and like, oh, if they recognize you, you can tell kind of from a distance, but they don't want to say anything because it's just so normal to.
Okay, to hear more from Jinger, check out that podcast, Dinner Party with Jeremy Fall. I pretty much laid it out for you. A lot of things about growing up in the public eye and how it was difficult for her in many ways, which is also one of the reasons why I question why she is stepping out so publicly now. I really believe that Jeremy is coaching her and saying to her, like, this is a way we can make an income, and let's do it in a way where our kids aren't exposed to national TV or a lot of publicity, but you and I, we've got to kind of make this work as social media influencers, Christian social media influencers, so that I can remain as a pastor at this church and hopefully climb the ladder in certain ways within the church community. But also that they would have the money to live on that they need to have to feed his tennis shoe, his sneaker habit. Once again, I know a lot of you really love Jeremy and Jinger. I have so many like positive comments and responses about them whenever I do a video, and I totally understand that. They've come a long way versus many of the other kids on the show, and we can't just punish or talk negatively about everybody in that family because of what's happened with Josh and maybe how Jim Bob made certain choices that we're not happy with, and I get all of that. But I've said from the beginning, I do want to hear from people and their differences of opinion on Jeremy, but I have a lot of concerns about Jeremy and why he does what he does and the kind of person that he is. And it's very much linked to what's going on with John MacArthur and the fact that I really feel Jeremy's trying to follow in John MacArthur's footsteps. Well, I enjoyed speaking with you guys tonight. I hope to see you again soon, but for now I'm headed off to bed. I hope you take some time to head down your own rabbit hole.